Good morning. It is Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, here in Sarasota, Florida. This recording is again inspired by a very specific group of women with whom I have only recently connected, and only connected thus far via the computer, via the internet. I have not met any of the women that I have in mind and in heart as I do this particular recording. I've not met any of them in person yet. In my world of work, since my awakening, I have been called by what I feel is my soul's mission. Now, being that I'm just little old Alyson in human form, I can't claim that I know for certain what God, spirit, creation, divine has in store for me. But the best I can do is make the most conscious choices through my human vessel and my human character of Alyson. My awakening was my point of no return, November 18th, 2010. Everything prior to that day made incredible sense almost instantly, meaning it was very clear to me how each step of my journey had led me exactly to where I needed to be and had provided me the exact experiences that I was intended to have in order to put it all together at this time. Okay? So when I set out and moved to Seattle, I knew that I was going to be entrepreneurial. I've been entrepreneurial since I was a little kid. I was running my first business while I was in high school. I wasn't the owner of it, but I was managing it and operating it as a 17-year-old while still going to school, playing all my sports, president of National Honor Society, all of these things. And I was running a small business. So I've been entrepreneurial really this whole life, but I sensed at a very high level that it was never going to be a business recognizable as such in the third dimension. And when I joined this online marketing course recently, it became even more clear and evident to me what I feel my role is at this time. And in part, it is to attempt to bring voice to this very conscious journey I've been on for the past 9 years through the company of me. Because what I set out to do was to be the change, literally, in every way, shape, and form with the formation of my company. To be the change with regards to how business is done, to be the change, really to be the change for a whole different sort of reality. And now I understand that to be sort of where we're going, the ascension, the fifth dimension and beyond. But to be honest with you, this was all really natural and in a way so pure post-awaken, like, because I didn't spend, like a lot of people have spent their entire lives, studying about Egypt or, studying these very nuanced, specific angles at which to speak about spirituality and the time in which we're living. I mean, this has been prophesized through all sorts of ways for eons of time. And in my life, I just sort of always was living it and knew it and sensed it. But what I didn't have until my awakening was I didn't have the ability to give myself permission to go after the world that I saw so clearly and felt so deeply, which was I couldn't find any validation outside of me. I spoke and talked and shared and overshared and spoke so fast. It was so many words, never really giving people a chance to respond. But what I really realized was people didn't really know how to respond because I really was tapping into the reality of the future. And when I had my awakening, I was in my late 30s, and I had not had any success in the third dimension by those definitions. I hadn't managed to build any sort of career. I wasn't married. I didn't have children or a family of my own. I didn't own anything. I didn't owe anything either. But I was kind of this, from the third dimensional standards, this big nobody, and it didn't have any resources at all. And here I was with this vision that I had had since I was a little girl. So what I set out to do, well, when I was in Seattle, I knew this was in my future, but I also knew I was just kind of leaping in, and I landed a job with Microsoft, landed in my lap. Unbelievable year there that I know wasn't accidental. And then I had to go away. Part of their contract deal was the type of vendor that I was, the contractor that I was, I could only be there for 12 months at a time. And then you had to go away for 3 months before you could start another contract. I was early into my spiritual journey, and there was really only one person in my world at that time with whom I was feeling this very different energy. And she was back in St. Pete, Florida. I had spent 14 years in the Tampa Bay area, came to college here on a basketball scholarship way back in 1994, never left, and met this woman, and didn't even really know her all that well, to be honest with you, but I knew what I felt in terms of our energy exchange. And I was all in, I was really naive still at this point. So I came back for my 3 months to St. Pete, to her place. I mean, that was the imagined goal, was that I came back, was going to hang out with her for 3 months. And like I said, I was on a mission. I knew my own company lay ahead of me. And I was like, shit, I'm knocking on 40 here. I felt in the third dimension as if I was behind. I had a lot of catching up to do in the third dimension to catch my physical life up to now this newfound understanding and awareness and awakening energy. Long story short, it became clear within about 6 weeks that I was not intended to do anything in this regard with somebody. This needed to be my company and my company alone, and entirely my energy creating it. So I left St. Pete and found myself, but almost instantly I knew I wasn't going back to Seattle. And that was insane to me. Like, I love it out there. I don't know how I would have handled Seattle, once all this nonsense hit. In fact, I can almost say it wouldn't feel the same now. But back then, in 2011, 2012, I absolutely was in bliss and heaven out there. But I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any really people or jobs or anything to really help me pay bills, earn money and pay bills over here, while I started my own thing over here, which I was building from scratch, and which was literally a vision to try to manifest a vision from the future into physical. So I was just kind of, really in the moment and following the energies and making the decisions as they came. Within a month of being here with her, I remember looking at her at the end of August in 2012 and shaking my head and going, shit, I'm not going back to Seattle, am I? And I just knew that if I was going to do this, it wasn't going to get easier to jump in and do this. Again, the older we get, the more ingrained you know that there are consequences for going against the grain and not doing things in the normal way, normal. And but I just knew, I'm like, this is it. If I'm going to make this happen, it's now. And so then when it didn't work out with her, and I found myself back in Sarasota, where I had kind of been in the interim. I left Tampa after 14 years and moved to Sarasota and worked on an organic farm and started a little business with my brother in 2008. And then in 2010, I left here, went to Michigan for a year, and then went out to Seattle for 14 months. And then I found myself back in Sarasota after leaving her in St. Pete. And so now I'm back in Sarasota. This is the fall of 2012. I still have a place in Seattle. I still want to be there, but I knew I was following the energy. And what has happened since making that decision to not get on the airplane to go back to Seattle, but instead to dedicate the rest of this life to following this higher energy and working to align every part of my life to that energy, recognizing to what degree everything that I saw and felt as my reality, if only in my little world, was 180 degrees different than everything out in the world in which I had been brought up and grown up in. Then when all this pandemic shit hit, I'm like, oh my God, like, this is it. This is what I've been in training for. Because for when I set out to do this and just followed the energy, it was like I was preparing for now this exact time to try to speak to this journey of bringing into physical form, fifth dimensional energy. Okay. I don't want to spend any more time right now trying to explain that aspect, but I needed to establish again this outer approach of how I've been living my life, following and being pulled by the higher energy. And the way and manner in which I set out and launched my company, I knew I needed it to be clearly not of this dimension and of this world. And the very real financial, enormous leap of faith that I took then sealed the deal that the character of Alyson, through her ego, was no longer it really driving the car. It was my higher self. And it was because the consequences of following that pure and innocent and real guidance to leap as big and as far as I left, which was completely in character with Alyson, the old Alyson of just like, more extreme and big and not yet at all really understanding to what degree the journey is within, to what degree you don't have to be out there leaping. You can take steps, little baby steps, take longer steps if you want, but you certainly don't need to leap as far as I leapt. However, back then, and even more so now, I know that this character of Alyson was intended to leap that big, because it was to set in motion a story. And I will keep repeating this. My story is our story. And really, we can all say that. But when I say this, I mean that when I speak about my journey openly and raw, vulnerable, and using and being willing to use the lessons I've learned, the experiences I've had, what I was thinking and what I was setting out to do when I made this choice or this decision, and then how it ended up transpiring, and evaluating that and learning lessons. And then, I'm naturally a teacher and a coach. I was a teacher in the classroom, albeit for only 2 years, but I was a teacher, 6th grade geography, and I was a coach, albeit only a few years and long ago. I was a basketball coach on the court, and I was a high-performing athlete all the way through early college before I relinquished my scholarship. And that's a whole nother story. But I naturally look to use what I learned to put out there to help anybody else that it may help. I'm not looking to tell anybody they need help. I'm just working to share these very high level lessons through my character and my story, because that's what I know intimately. And I have been studying for 9 years now at the nth degree my unique energy and how it's interacting out in the world with the ascension and the fifth dimension and the shift in consciousness and all of that, that is in the driver's seat. That is what's guiding me. That is what I allowed to take over, really, this incarnation when I took a damn near six-figure leap of faith to put this all in motion. And I was starting with nothing, literally nothing of the third dimension. I started by giving money away, utilizing 0% credit because it was the only way I could do it without like using that was the only resource I had of my own, was my exceptional credit standing. And I was not going to water this down by, and still to this day, very, very few are feeling yet the biggest picture. I liken it to dominoes. Not that I ever did this, but I've watched, whether in movies or I remember one in the TV series Numbers, which I really liked with Rob Morrow and David. I don't know how to say his last name. It's a great series because I really am big with numbers, and it's like I calculate in this strange way where I'm not actually doing the math, but I'm constantly calculating specifically probabilities and probable timelines. But I remember a domino scene somewhere in that series, and where you set up a huge spread of all dominoes, and you knock one down and then it branches off into all these things, depending on how big of a setup how elaborate it is. I've been setting up an elaborate layout of dominoes for 9 years. And there are a lot of things that in the third dimension surface level, when you look at it, how do I explain this? To really grasp what it is I'm doing, it's not going to happen in a 30-second soundbite. I don't have an elevator pitch, nor do I want to bring it down to that. This is going to, for people to really begin to really feel it, it's going to take a little bit more than 30 seconds. And I like to believe that it's the energy that comes through the various aspects of and various ways in which I'm sharing that will pull people, or it won't. But I do believe that what I'm living, what I have lived, is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the shift going on the planet right now. And clearly as a collective, we're still resisting quite a bit. As a collective, there is still a lot of resistance. There are still a lot of wounds, a lot of healing to do. And within myself as well. I never, ever am intending to come here as if I be all, know all. No, I'm intending to be this live representation of authenticity, of simultaneously, I am in my higher self, in my empowered woman. But man, those child wounds, they still arise. It's an unending journey. You never reach the finish line. I don't know that I'll ever fully be healed in this vessel. I don't know. So I'm never trying to put that out. But I know now more than ever, my work will trigger people because everybody receives it from where they are at. And it's taken me a very long time to be able to not accept others' reactions or non-reactions, and be affected by that, positively or negatively. And that brings me to now just kind of speaking. So that's kind of the high level. That's what I've been doing for 9 years. I'm trying to bring into form a reality that is completely different from the third dimension. I'm not trying to judge the third dimension. I'm not judging anybody within the third dimension. I'm just saying there are massive limitations that became ever so clear on November 18th, 2010, when I finally gave myself permission to no longer settle for how incredibly limiting this reality, this mass reality that's crumbling before us right now. My journey, I suffocated in that reality. I had to hold myself back. I was not able to meld myself into a way that ever really felt like it was serving me. I just didn't. I wasn't able to until I had this awakening. I'm like, whoa, this reality that's always been more real to me than this is real. I feel it. I see it. I know it exists. But I didn't have any, I hadn't read a shit ton of books at this time. Like I didn't have a lifetime of studying that, but I had a lifetime of knowing that, as we all do in our hearts, because that is the essence of what comprises all of us, and therefore what connects all of us. So now let me bring it back to present day. I joined this online marketing course, and the course and the guy teaching it ended up triggering me in unprecedented ways. And for the past 9 weeks almost, I have been deep in the dredges of those triggers, working to allow them to come to the surface. Lots of ego, lots of wounded child, lots of old patterns, lots of things that I didn't realize were still unresolved. And that's how it works when you're on the journey. You don't realize it till it comes to the surface. But here's the interesting thing. I started following this guy about a year ago. I haven't owned a TV since 2008, never will again own a TV. I had followed hardly anything in the mainstream, not even entertainment and sports, which, I used to really be connected to. I haven't paid attention to anything in over a decade. And when this pandemic hit and I lost my primary work in the event world for 2020, I knew I needed to reconnect with what was going on in the world. And I found myself drawn to all these different individuals from all across the globe, talking about things from all these different perspectives, and almost across the board, it was all new to me. I didn't need any more, further convincing that this existing world was kind of fucked up. Okay, after 9/11, I went down the rabbit hole because to me, that was glaringly obvious. I went down the rabbit hole for a few years. All I found was that I got frustrated and upset and angry, and it made me feel even worse than I already felt before 9/11. So I didn't need any more convincing. I didn't need to go really down any more of the rabbit holes of the third dimensional stuff and of what's already transpired. What it did for me when all this hit was like basically it's like it's here. The shift is here. The shift in consciousness, ascension, all these books, what they all talk about, it's here. Now it's like, wow, okay, you got to really get your game on. You really got to tighten up your work. You really got to make it more clear and get something that makes sense to people out in the third dimension, more than outside your head, to other humans that are still walking around. You got to get it. It's go time, man. It's go time. You're going to find your tribe. Now it's really time to put into action all these things you've been practicing and living for 9 years just within your little life. So I found myself drawn to this one particular guy. And I am going to use some names here that are already public. They're already out there publicly. And none of the 3 names that I'm going to bring back up in this recording I don't have anything personal one-on-one with them, any direct connection yet. And that's about to change today, because and what that means is the interactions their energies have been indirectly intersecting with my energy, but I haven't had any back and forth where these people haven't done anything. And I'm speaking mostly about this guy. The other 2 are ladies, Mark Attwood, Mel K, and Roseanne Barr. Back in March, let me also say this. So for 9 years, what I've been doing is progressively and slowly and in multiple arms of my world. The goal is always to put together and assemble and be in any given moment the best version of myself, which is the one that is not settling for all the limitations of this world of fear, lack, competition, money, all those things, but to instead abundance, thriving, love, basically in any given moment, live as much love as possible, and try to provide a real life example of what business looks like in the future world of Earth, in the new Earth, what day-to-day life looks like when you give yourself the space to be more in the now, which our present world is not structured. It's not structured. It's not structured work-wise. We're not conditioned. And all the power is in the now. So that's a very different way of engaging in the world and learning how to build in your world, not just personally, but I've been creating a business, albeit just me, business of me and my energies and my skill sets and my gifts around being able to take as much advantage as possible of the now moment, which then means being able to take things that happen when these triggers happen, when you go deep, when you peel back the onion, when you go through the process of transmuting the ego stuff to the higher dimensions, being able to then integrate that now changed version of you into your world immediately. My experience has been, and I have jumped around in a lot of places of work over my 20 plus years post-graduation from college, there's no room to do that. There's no room to integrate the lessons. And again, I'm speaking personally, I would argue personal, I would argue there's not much room that we don't give one another the room personally. But I'm kind of focused on the professional and the work because my goal has been to prepare us for where we're going, which is outside of all these systems and really existing in just energy exchanges. It's all energy, right? It's all an energy exchange. That's all it is. And learning how to take the best advantage of the now moment from as much love as possible in a world that's 180 degrees opposite from that. So I was drawn to this guy, Mark, and not, I kind of also use things as like a primary soul group and a secondary soul group. I stole that from Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls, which really resonated with me. I put it in my top 5 of all spiritual books I've ever read, and I've read probably hundreds, definitely over 100 for sure. Michael Newton, Journey of Souls, 30 years of deep regression hypnosis, where he discovered that no matter what the personality looked like in his office, they were all talking about the same behind the scenes schooling, if you will, of how our souls work, how we work when we just make these choices to come into these bodies, to come into these lives. And it was, I couldn't put the book down. And in that book, he suggested that we have primary soul groups of like 25, where we constantly experience multiple different lifetimes with the same 25 souls playing different roles. So somebody might be your spouse in one life, they might be your parent in another life, a sibling in another, a close friend or an extended relative in another, but you tend to have had multiple lifetimes in all these different dynamics with 25 souls. And then he called the secondary soul group. And again, the numbers, I don't remember exactly where they came from. Well, they came, I believe, from what the souls in his appointments would reveal when under this deep regression hypnosis. And I think that's where the numberings of 25 souls for your primary group, about 1,000 different souls for your secondary group. I would say Mark is in my secondary group. I don't think he's in my primary group, although that remains to be seen, because right now our relationship is one-sided. It's all me very much tapping in and feeling our unique energy, like his unique energy, because I don't know how else to experience life. I experience things very deeply. And I'm not somebody that's about bigger is better and shit tons of people in my world. I like smaller, more intimate connections. And that's another thing to speak about in my world of work. It's growing up, I loved movies and storytelling and character-driven movies and films and television programs. But with movies, what always drew me in was the way that the work was done. You bring in a crew and a group, and for like 3 months or sometimes longer, but it's like 3 to 6 months, that is their focus. Like the whole group and everybody's coming together, agreeing to play certain roles. And it's just so intimate and intense because that's your full focus. And I always love the idea of like the actors and actresses diving into these roles and really putting themselves in the experience of these characters they were playing. So that's how I want that way of engaging in the world. All work is taking our skill sets and our interests and our desires and going out in the world and meeting needs. So that's what I'm trying to create as well with my company of me, is basically saying, hey, we are all a conglomerate, of our experiences and my skill sets. And I want to engage in the world in as vast a way as I am. Sometimes I want to be just where it's somebody else's project. And I'm just kind of there serving a role where I'm not the leader, I'm not guiding the project. Other times I want the opportunity to have it be my project where I'm in control of something and kind of managing the energy. Again, and it's never to be anybody's boss. None of that. It is simply to create these places where we can come together and talk about, hey, this is what I'm looking for to provide. And this is what, and meeting, finding win-wins, two-way communication. No longer do we feel like lucky because we've got these companies and they tell us how it is. And as the employees, we have no power, we have no say. All these false hierarchies where nothing is really authentic because everybody's afraid of the fucking hierarchies, whether they say the wrong thing to the wrong person. So it's a world of inauthenticity. I can't be in that world. Like I have no choice but to be as authentic and real and as deep and complete as I am in all my faults and all my positives. And so I'm constantly, I've been working and I have all these projects in all these realms to be the best me and to utilize different parts of me in these different ways. And for me, that has come through what I call storylines of my life. So the farm is a storyline. The world of Iron Man is a storyline. The experience from Microsoft is a storyline. The whole Sarasota experience is a storyline. And they're very isolated with very specific frequencies of energy. And I'm beginning to hone that in an unprecedented way, in no small part due to the walloping experience I've had in the past few months after joining this class. Okay, so I'm drawn to this guy back a year ago. I'm sensing it's secondary soul group, it's not super, but it's on this other level where I kind of feel like we're in pods of energy and we've got intersecting pods across the globe as we work to raise the frequency, raise the vibration, and provide this energy and this permission for others to wake up, remember our power, remember to what degree we can change things if we just stop agreeing to the rules that none of us want to play by. But it requires us to really continue to take action on that. The words are important, but the next step is to really live beyond these systems, most notably the system of money. And I point that out only because out of all the systems, if we're talking about health and well-being, economic, financial, artistic, cultural, all these, educational, all these systems that identify how a society operates. If I were to pick two, they kind of go hand in hand. Economic and financial systems is the energy that got hugely triggered by the topic matter of this course, and therefore by extension, the guy delivering the course and teaching the course. So, and I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but it's going to be what it's going to be because it's almost impossible for me to bring words to any of this. So I can't overthink. It's not going to make 100% sense in any one recording. I can pretty much guarantee that. I'm just trying to continue to get the energy out there and be unafraid, and that's going to allow me to hone in at the next level in my little world of work. So I'm drawn to his energy. I think it's at a high level. In March, I felt compelled to write to him directly. because in a meditation one morning, very clear, like Mark, Mel, and Roseanne. And here is why I believe that happens. Because again, it's always about looking at all the pieces of my life and finding the way to interweave the thing that serves love and where we're going, first and foremost, through my character, and then to have a ripple effect as to affect as much and as many as possible with this love. And at the moment that I had this, they came to me, I was contemplating whether or not to accept a very big role in the Ironman world. And see, I in short, if I said no, I was about to lose my place in a world that I had worked really hard in the third dimension for 6 years to get myself the opportunity in that world. And that is a potent energy world. And from the first day that that opportunity fell in my lap, I did not go seeking it, fell in my lap back in 2015, I knew that some way, somehow, that spirit was involved. I knew it from day one. And I lived that experience within the world of Ironman with that knowing, not knowing exactly what that meant or how it would transpire, but I knew it. And to this date, that is the world in which I have been able to shine the brightest, be the most complete me. However, and I was doing it as the little guy. You can't get much lower on the totem pole than I was at Microsoft and at Ironman as the little guy, so I don't have any title, like I'm just the little guy, but the energy exchange with the people of that world, the ground floor people, those of us in these cities setting up these huge events was unbelievable. But I had to, my spirit, the biggest part of me is my spirit side, is what was driving me, what drives every decision. That was under the radar. That wasn't talked about or shared with hardly anybody. Only the few people with whom I really closely worked with on a regular basis, and or the ladies with whom I shared a room with. Those are the only ones that got a glimpse of the essence of me. And so that's a big piece to not have active within that world. Okay. So Roseanne. So I also was drawn to this woman named Mel K out of New York. I love her energy. Okay. And then Roseanne Barr. I grew up watching Roseanne's shows. But I also was drawn, now Roseanne hasn't been very public at all in the past year, but up when the first pandemic first happened, up until like the end of the year, she was releasing some things on her channel. And then I found out she was in Hawaii, okay? Ironman wanted me. Now, I for all sorts of reasons, I have not been able to rejoin the event world, least of which because all these most powerful people that I had never worked with, such the power of these individuals and the heart power, the physical prowess, like just, and then to watch that world fall right in line with the mainstream bullshit, really, it then changed the whole thing. Now, if I were to go back in that world to an outside event and work it with masks, like, it now had become a completely different energy, and I am extremely energy sensitive. So what I had told these guys, I'm out, I'm out for 2021 because I could still see that it was going to be crazy and it's not easy for me to leave town. It's never been an easy gig for me traveling as much as I was traveling because I don't have anybody really to lean on all that much here in Sarasota, barely anybody to lean on. And I'm a single woman. I have a home. I have 2 pets, and one of them is a lot of health issues. So he needs so much attention. So it was very, very, very hard for me to travel the extent that I was traveling 15, 16 weeks a year. And so I'm like, I can't not, like, now more than ever, I really have to be following this higher version of myself, and I can't settle. I was already settling because you kind of have to until you manifest these greater things. Now I'm like, the cost, the opportunity cost was too high. but they really wanted me. They're like, can we just get you for 2 events? Can we just get you for the world champion events? The one in St. George for the 70.3 half Ironman World Championship, and then Hawaii. Ironman, they were born in Hawaii. The event was born there over 40 years ago. I find out that Roseanne lives in Hawaii. Roseanne, I had watched Roseanne and Mel K have multiple recordings, and then Mel K and Mark having recordings. And I'm like, holy shit. And Roseanne had recently bought this church or this building. And then I didn't know at the point that I didn't know right off the bat which island she lived on, right? So I come out of meditation and I write to Mark and I try to communicate with him. And then I was inspired to do an entire podcast episode on my podcast, Best Damn Reality, basically saying what I'm saying now. I'm like, man, I'm telling you, I'm supposed to cross paths, and if I cross paths and Mark was always the first one that I felt this. And then I'm like, okay, cross paths with Mark. He has a direct connection to Mel K. She has a direct connection to Roseanne. And I'm following sort of this intuition of potentiality. Okay, of course, none of this is all in my head, but it's a very real potential. Those are very real direct dots that could be connected. Simultaneously, I have this huge project called Ripple 2020. And I'm like, man, I would deal with all the horse shit and the uncomfortable environment of being in a race that had such a different energy. And now it's got, with masks and all that horse shit. So it's going to be very different. It's no longer going to be fueling me. It's going to be challenging me. But when I found out Roseanne lived on the Big Island, which is not very big, and anybody on the Big Island knows about Ironman, I was like, now, if I could somehow manifest a way where Roseanne and I could connect to come together to do something serving where we're going, then I would say yes to these events. Okay. That was sort of the starting point in March. I knew the path was going to cross with one or all of them. I tried to contact Mark. He never received, I don't think. I don't think he ever read the first 2 emails in March. Then in May, I was watching a video of his where he said, and this guy's a British guy that lives in Ireland, and he said that he had only lived in one place in America, and it was in Sarasota. And then I sent him a third message on his Patreon, and I said, okay, now I live in Sarasota. Like, there's no accidents. Like, I don't know what this means, but this is not minor, man. And I get it. He is a hugely successful in the third dimensional guy. He is a huge voice in the truth community and the spirit, so I get it. I'm a little nobody in the third dimension trying to I get what that looks like for most people. And look, I'm not a nutter. I'm not crazy. I'm not I don't have this crazy, anything of the third dimension. I'm not trying to I don't even want to get on a show unless I've got this project ready to serve. I'm not drawn for that. I'm drawn uniquely to his energy and believe our souls made a contract. And it was just absolutely confirmed 2 months later in May when I learned he had been in Sarasota and lived in Sarasota and had been profoundly affected in Sarasota, Florida. It's not like we're talking about New York City or fucking Chicago or LA. We're talking about little old sleepy Sarasota, okay? Then, that's in May. Now fast forward to the very end of July, and this guy posts an online course. And you have to make the decision within 2 days to kind of get in on this first round of the course. And I did not want to take it originally because, and that's a whole nother description of why, or explanation or piece of this, but it has to do with the money and the monetizing and the whole, what the course was. But then after meditating and sleeping on it at night, I'm like, I got to take this course. And then, so now I'm in a course. Now I go from, feeling this in March and reaching out, no answer. Then learning he had actually lived in the city that I'm in May, and reached out again, no answer, no contact. Then in the end of July, he announces this course. I take it, and I'm only one of like 150. This guy's got like 25, 30,000 followers and people, and then is very close to another woman who's got like 80 or 90,000 people. So it's like these guys are big, and I respect that, and I respect that. But I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to come at them at the same level when in the third dimension I got nothing to show really? So all I got is my energy. And what I believe is this, following this intuition, like clearly Spirit's given me an aid here and saying, hey, if he sees it, he sees it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. All you're doing is my side. All I can do is honor what Spirit is telling me to do in terms of these communications and these choices. So now we're at the end of July, the class starts. Now the class starts, and for the first 3 weeks, I am flying high, way too high, because I would come crashing down pretty abruptly 3 weeks later, really abruptly. But I'm flying high, I'm on pace, and it is a tough course to stay on pace. So I'm on pace. And then in our third module, our third lesson, he was looking for volunteers to use their material, their product, to help as a model for the class to walk through. I was one of 8 names that were put in. I was the first one selected, and I would end up being the only one used in that way in that course. And I was able to, he was working with me using my work on my computer. I was sharing my screen with him, teaching using my stuff for over an hour. Coincidence? Accident? I think not. Now, that was not a personal connection. It was very much material, subject related. It wasn't personal. We have still not yet had any sort of personal connection. Now, after that module, I think it was like 2 weeks, 1 week later, it was not very long. I was watching him on a YouTube with another woman that has a pretty decent following from the course. And I'm going to use her name because, well, I'll use her YouTube name. It's Pyramid Journey Through Ascension. And he was speaking to her, and I had also really connected with her energy prior to the course. And it was just another synchronicity that she too happened to be in this course, because the energy in this course, and by extension, all the individuals in this first round of his course, we were co-creating the course from scratch with him. That is not an accident, that group and those people. So I'm watching him with her. And whoa, man, again, these downloads of like our higher selves. And so then I reached out to send him a private message in Telegram that night. And I know he's busy. He's so busy, and he's got all these people. So, and again, I got nothing to show to see, to, encourage him that I promise you I'm worth 5 minutes. I am worth 5 minutes of your time. I'm worth more than that. I promise you I'm worth, I believe I'm worth, I'll make it. What he always is like saying with regards to our content and our products, you got to show others what's in it for them. I promise I can connect it quickly, what's in it for you, if you just give me an interaction. And if you're able to, for argument's sake, just believe that maybe it's possible that despite everything on the surface, I'm at the same, frequency. This is not an accident. Like, we're meant to cross paths, but in order to figure out why, you gotta give me a chance. And again, in the third dimension, I don't need it from the ego pats or anything like that. It's just like, I was so excited and nervous and because again, I've known powerful people in the third dimension, highly successful people in the third dimension my whole life. Most people from my past have been extremely successful in that dimension. So I know and respect what that takes. So I wrote this message, and he not only never responded, he never read it. And that single-handedly triggered the biggest and deepest wounds of Alyson's life in this lifetime, of my soul's life as Alyson. especially and most notably my experience with powerful men, when it get like, it's like it triggered no one. I have poured my soul out for most of this life with very little acknowledgement, receipt, like nothing. It's not been reciprocated. I have had hardly any mutual flowing of energy and reflection and projection from here. When I go here and express and share, it's just not been able to be perceived, especially by the masculine energy. Feminine is a different story, but it's still been minimal even with the females in my life, because the vision and everything that I see is so opposite of this world, but especially with men and powerful men. It's like, and I work with men. I work with men all the time. I have great relationships with men because I'm one of the guys. It's like, as long as I'm one of the guys, man, it's awesome. Like, and they see me and they flow and they don't treat me any differently, and huge respect from them. But where I found my limitations is when I start to express or share something that they can't see, or that they're uncomfortable with, or any of those things. I've not yet experienced being able to do that, and just a lot of pain and wounds. And I have shared very deep things trying to heal these wounds with the males that are at the kind of foundation of it in this life. My father, my brothers, my ex-significant others, and to no avail. And in fact, almost across the board, I'll pour my heart out and write these things, and there's not even any response. And so when he didn't read the message, he didn't even read it. Now this would be the fourth message. And I'm like, and I thought, again, I know there's 160 of us in the class. He's still doing this YouTube channel. The guy's a single dad of 5 kids. He's running a business. Like, I get it. But I kind of thought I had earned it because the other people in the class had said, geez, you really held your own when you were working with Mark. Like, apparently in the chat, and I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I barely felt like I didn't perceive that experience at all like that. But all these people in the class, multiple people were like, man, you really held your own, and I was like, oh, okay. But when they told me that, I'm like, okay, maybe I've proven myself enough where I can get him at least to read a message from me. And when that didn't happen, Alyson came crashing down really, really hard. Within about, I'd have to look at the days, but I think it was within like 2 days. I think I sent that to him on a Thursday, and Saturday night, after I did my last live that I've done, I came crashing down to all those wounds. And then he became, without any active participation, really with just complete inaction, he became like the focus of me working through all of this really hard, ugly, deep, ugly in terms of, you get into that ego when you're wounded, then you start judging because you're hurt. I was hurt. I was so hurt. And I'm like, still not being heard or seen. And I don't need it from this ego perspective. It's like, I don't need it from this dimension. I got big things I'm intended to do. And it's not from the ego, but I need somebody that's big in the ego world to see that, to allow the work to get its exposure. So now let's fast forward to yesterday, October 12th. I come home from the farm, I take a shower, something kind of happened. Like a little medical scare kind of happened, as I'm, showering up and getting ready to come to my work, in my world of work here at the table. And I won't share that here, but a kind of a scare, and not a small scare, and one that I kind of had to really dive into right away to decide how, if at all, I was going to pursue anything regarding that scare. And as I kind of come out of the kitchen, or come out of, out of my bedroom and out here to the dining room, I see that Mark emailed me directly. and just said, "Are you okay?" Is the subject line. And then there was just this one sentence check-in, because he noticed that I haven't, because when I hit that wall, it's been almost 9 weeks after being hugely active within our course. For those first 3 weeks, I've like disappeared because I had to. And I didn't even think he would remember my name, to be honest with you. So I was genuinely shocked and super touched when I saw his email. But I couldn't even process it, because I literally had I was processing this very real potential health scare thing. And so I couldn't even really begin to give it attention, other than like, oh my God, I holy shit. And for that to happen whoa. So here I am today though, and I want to respond. I want to respond within a timely manner. And I am not quite sure yet how or what the response, I haven't done it yet. And I wanted to get at least one more recording, capturing the bigger picture, the bigger story, before responding to him, because this now constitutes him reaching out in that way, now constitutes our first personal exchange on something other than the course. And that will, going forward, that private, like I share only the fact that it was initiated, because now that is that's a big change, no matter what. Because trust me, I have to be prepared that I will respond, and he's so busy that he still might not see the response. Like I cannot be attached. I cannot have expectations. This isn't from the ego, and I want to come across as my empowered woman. Like I don't need these pats on the backs or this ego stuff, but I have to acknowledge and be prepared and be aware that my wounded child was enormously triggered by him. And I feel as if I've really worked through another round of insane amounts of release and healing and forgiveness of these wounds through his energy triggering me. But I'm just trying to prepare myself for, I'm just trying to honor and have it and not make it any bigger deal than it is. But I needed to capture where it falls in this more public way, because I maintain our paths are not crossing accidentally. And I maintain that somehow, some way, well, it already has. What's already happened as a result of being in this class. And it's just begun, really. And the connections I've made with, and so far, all women. I've only interacted with 2 gentlemen on a very limited one-on-one basis, very limited. But with a whole handful of women from across the planet, I've connected in again. I'm just like humbled. I'm humbled and in awe of those connections. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. And I have no idea what, if anything, may come of something specific with Mark. I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But it is in my little world, the smallest of things are felt as if they're monumental. The fact that our souls have gotten here, the fact that it hit me on this intuitive level all those months ago, and now to receive, and when I just sit and feel, if only in that second or minute, we'll say, as he composed this direct message to me, through our ego selves and asked, are you okay? For me to sit with that and feel that, if I sat with it long enough and allowed myself, I could easily be brought to tears. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens from here. It's almost like I think I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna conclude it on that note and take this opportunity publicly to say to him before answering privately, thank you. Thank you for thank you for all you are doing. Because I'm just one little person. And all of us little people that are awakening right now to our power, what role you're playing has been enormous. And I am just honored and thrilled to have shared in this time with you and with all this energy that was drawn to you. People took your class, especially the first round of us. I would say if you took a little poll, you would find out that over 50%, I would say probably 75% of us took it, if not more, because of the connection we felt with you. Of course, on a higher general level, not on a one-to-one level. And to then feel a one-on-one connection, if only with that one sentence, it means the world to me, no matter what happens from here. And no matter what I share publicly with my work that pertains to you, and this goes for anybody that I reference, and I will never use names unless permission is given or unless they're already public. But when I refer to specific energies of humans in my life, in my work, there is no greater, there's no greater thing one can play in my world, but as inspiration in my world of work and what I'm drawn to share. The people that I've lived life with and have had experiences with that I feel compelled, and my discernment, although I'm still growing and learning, it is leaps and bounds different and more evolved than it was when I first started. I don't share anything without purpose and intention. And I'm always working to follow that energy, coming through my higher self and guiding the character of Alyson to make her choices for 9 years. And this is just, it's so small, but it's not. And it's such a reminder to all of us. Nothing. It's like simultaneously it means nothing and it means everything. That's like the magic and the power of life right now. It means absolutely, from the grand scheme of things, nothing. But from a different perspective, a soul perspective, you reaching out in that way, thank you. And to all of you, or any of you tuning in, listening, we can create a very different reality very quickly if we just trust that more and allow it to pull us and settle less and less for anything of this dimension that is not that. Thank you for your time and attention. We'll talk again soon.